Hello, and welcome to our second session. I'm very pleased to introduce Hayley Neill, who's an engineering manager at ASOS.com. She has experience of various tech roles and leads a team of engineers based in Belfast. Hayley will talk to us on the power of empathy in development teams. And I'm actually a bit disturbed to hear from what you've shared that there's actually a reduction in empathy. And Hayley will explain that it's been scientifically proven that an increase in empathy can lead to an increase in creativity within technical teams and leads to retention of talent. Hayley, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share.
Thank you.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Like she said, my name is Hayley. I've worked at ASOS and I've worked in the tech industry for 8 years. So today I'm here to talk to you about a topic that is really underestimated in the world of development, and that is empathy. So Atlassian did a survey recently, and 88% of people felt that empathy helped them in their day job. And furthermore, 63% of people felt that they performed overall better as a team. And they are huge figures. So today I want to talk to you a bit about what are the signs that you maybe need to work on your empathy, what are the problems when you don't have empathy in your team, and what are the benefits and how do you practice empathy on a daily basis. So I'm going to start with defining empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the feeling of others. And this differs from sympathy, that is more feelings of pity and feeling sorry for someone. So I'm going to share some examples here just to kind of define the difference between the two. So sympathy, a friend who's going through a difficult time and you feel compassion for them. However, empathy is a friend who is going through a difficult time and you can relate to their feelings because you've gone through a similar experience. So often, that doesn't necessarily mean you've gone through the same situation, but you're able to draw upon your own experiences to empathise with that person. So I want you to think about your yearly objectives. When you set them, do you focus on your technical skills, or do you also bring in your soft skill objectives? And I know that there is a really interesting talk on soft skills later today, but empathy is one of those soft skills. So it's really important that you think about how you can improve upon your own soft skills as well as your technical skills. So who do you empathise with? You may immediately think of your immediate team, but this also means your wider team. It also means those you interact with on a daily basis from the business. And it also means your customers or end users, depending on who your software is for. So what are the signs that empathy is not your focus? And before I get into these points, I want to reiterate that just because you may relate to one or two of these does not mean that you don't have empathy. It simply means that you can practice empathy more. So the signs are extremely critical of others, feeling that others are too sensitive, not listening to others' opinions and perspectives, inability to deal with emotional situations, blaming others, and confused about others' feelings. So what happens if your team doesn't focus on empathy? Poor communication. So you tend to have weaker relationships in your team if you aren't able to understand from each other's perspective. So it's really important that you build on those relationships, or you'll find that there'll be misunderstandings and people will be afraid to share their opinions out of fear of judgment. And this leads on to reduced collaboration. So people are less likely to work together, pair on tasks, and communicate with each other because they have that fear. If people are understanding and can kind of empathise with each other, then they're more likely to collaborate and work better on tasks, which does lead to higher quality software. Decreased product quality. So whenever you have a team that can't empathise with each other, it means that they are less likely to create software that is of a high quality. So it's really important that you kind of work on empathy because it's going to help you in terms of understanding how each other approach tasks. Increased conflict. So when you have a team that feel undervalued or misunderstood, it can create conflict in the team. Whenever each other don't understand from different perspectives, it means that they won't necessarily look at how someone else might approach a task differently to you. So it's really important to be open to understanding from someone else's perspective and understanding how someone else approaches a task. Low retention rate. It's often seen that people leave jobs for money, and while that may be partly true, a lot of it is to do with the culture within their team and company. So it's really important that you understand that teams might have a high turnover rate due to a lack of empathy in their team because they don't feel valued, they feel stressed, and they feel misheard. Resistance to change. So in agile development, we require adaptability. So people need to be able to move fast, change with the markets, and change with requirements, which we all know evolve very quickly. Blame culture. So I don't know if you've heard of the command git blame, but teams can have a very similar culture to this. Without empathy, it can lead to finger pointing. So the blame falls on one person rather than the whole team. And this doesn't benefit the team because not everyone is getting that learning from the issues that occur. And toxic work environment. So we want to get up every day and enjoy our jobs. And for some people who work in non-empathetic teams, that isn't the case. Without empathy, it can lead to a toxic work environment, and it can lead to people feeling terribly unhappy in their jobs. So what are the benefits of empathy? So better requirement understanding. If you're empathetic, you're able to understand from a product owner or a customer's perspective. So you'll understand the requirements and constraints of a project much more clearly. This leads to clearer and more accurate product specifications. User-centric design. Empathy is key here. Developers will create more intuitive and user-friendly features because they're able to understand the customer, understand exactly what they need and exactly what they want. Effective problem solving. Empathy enhances your problem-solving skills. Developers can see problems from different angles and perspectives, which makes them better at solving technical problems, and going forward, they will be able to do those more clearly. Reduction in bugs and errors. So, again, understanding your customer, you're more likely to anticipate possible user error and problems. This can lead to early identification of problems and issues, and this means that you can prevent them before the end customer even gets that software. This reduces the number of bugs in the final product, which means you're less likely to face incidents going forward. Increased quality assurance. So empathy for the end user encourages thorough testing. So if you're thoroughly testing your software, it's going to be more robust. And the reason for this is that empathy, when you empathize with the end user, you're more likely to want to create software of a higher quality. Developers are more likely to think about real-world situations, so they're going to think about how the user is using it on a daily basis. Smoother integration and deployment. Empathetic teams work more effectively, resulting in smoother integration and deployment processes. So a team that can empathize with each other have better ways of working and implement better processes in their team. This leads to a reduction in deployment issues and downtime. So the big question, how do you practice empathy? Lead by example. So this is often seen as something that only leaders need to do. And that's not true. Anyone can set an example. So whenever you think about your day-to-day job, the way that you interact with your team sets an example. So great ways of doing this is be curious. If you think of children, they ask questions constantly. Where are we going? Why are we doing this? What is this? And the reason they're doing that is to work out the world around them. And as we get older, we do this less and less. But it is really important that we keep asking those questions. Understand the people you work with. Build that relationship. Maybe there are people that you don't work with on a daily basis, or maybe just work with a little bit less. Take the time to understand how they work, understand a bit about them, and you'll find that overall the team's performance and the team's relationship will be much better. User-centered design. Get involved directly with the end user. And I know that this is not always easy. Have user interactions through usability testing, interviews, or shadowing. By getting yourself involved with the end user, you're understanding their needs, you're understanding what they want. And that's really important because at the end of the day, they are the people who are using your software. Cross-training. This is a personal favourite of mine. We often find that people don't understand each other's role because they have never worked in that role before. So if you have a team, get them to learn a bit about each other's role. And the reason for this is you will then understand better the challenges that each person faces, and you'll be able to build stronger relationships within your team because you'll have respect for each other's role. Open and inclusive communication. Encourage your team to share their thoughts and ideas without fear of judgment. It's really important that everyone in your team has the space to feel they can share their ideas without being shot down or without being judged. So it's really important that you build those relationships, by communicating with each other, spending the time to get to know each other and how each other work and how each other approach tasks, because that's what's going to build that relationship and that trust within the team. Feedback and recognition. So it's very often that we focus on the negatives. So we focus on the problems, we focus on the incidents and the issues that are occurring. It's really important to recognize the efforts in your team, to say thank you, and to give that pat on the back when it's deserved. That makes people feel valued and makes them feel part of the team. But it's also really important that when you're giving feedback, negatively, that you're giving constructive feedback, so that that feedback is going to help that person in their day-to-day job. Empathy is not just a buzzword that you see on a CV or you hear in a TED Talk. It's really important that you focus on empathy in your team because it will improve your overall performance. You can create an environment where your team effectively collaborates and which ultimately leads to results. I would encourage everyone here to make empathy an objective and a focus within your team because it truly will improve your overall performance. Any questions?
Thank you, Hayley. We have Olivia here with a roving mic, so if you have any questions to ask, just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Thank you.
Hi, Hayley. For teams who are remote, who aren't all working in the same location, who are working remotely, what would you recommend for building empathy in those teams?
So one of the things that I'm doing in ASOS at the moment is running these empathy workshops to basically make people aware that it is important and that it's something that they need to focus on. But a great way in terms of teams remotely is, having those quizzes and icebreakers and, interacting more regularly outside of, the work kind of topics. Because often whenever you have a remote team and they're on calls, it's straight into work. It's not having that conversation that you would have at the kitchen. So it's really important that you actively take that opportunity to engage with each other, get to know each other, and like I say, take a step back, ask the questions that you maybe necessarily wouldn't ask.
Hello, my name's Daniel. One of my team members, I found out last year, or 2 years ago, during COVID, had bipolar disorder. One of the things that was good about our manager at the time was getting the team together, having a discussion, having chats, and getting to know each other. And bipolar disorder, I didn't know much about, but then I started to understand what it's like for him if he's having a bad week or a bad day or a good week, how that impacts work. And when the rest of the team knew, that helped us work better together and understand each other. My question is sort of how, for teams that don't do this already, would you say is the best way of trying to get comfortable, sharing more about yourself, how you work, how you feel, and things that make you comfortable or uncomfortable?
Yeah, so obviously that's quite a difficult one. I think that, in ASOS we do it really great. We have bite-sized learning, and we do technical talks, but we also do topics on, soft skills and a bit about, so we had a talk recently about autism. And it's really important to educate people in terms of like these kind of topics, because obviously, like you say, bipolar disorder, if you hadn't had an experience of that previously, it's harder for you to understand what that person's going through and how best to support them. So I think from a team and company perspective, I think it's really important to have these sessions where you educate people on these kind of topics, because it means that people will become more aware and more understanding towards these people.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, there's one there.
Hi, my name's Sharon. Thanks for that talk. That was brilliant, Hayley. My question is, empathy comes a lot more naturally to some people than others. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for how you can encourage those who don't empathise as easily to do so?
Yes, so that's a really great question. We recently had this experience in our team, and I think that sometimes people don't necessarily realise how important it is, and that they don't necessarily see the benefit. So I think it's about, if you know there is someone who maybe needs to practice empathy a bit more, having that conversation with them in terms of what are the benefits of this. And that's why I kind of wanted to go through some of the technical kind of benefits as well today, that I think a lot of people just kind of see it as a feeling and something that they don't need to work on. But it is absolutely something you can practice. So I think it's about having an open conversation with that person and kind of educating them in terms of what are the benefits of them being more empathetic.
I just wanted to bring in, kind of leading on from other points people have made, I think people who have maybe issues with mental health, or maybe they're not neurotypical, who can't feel empathy the same way we would, even if they're really trying. Do you think it's sort of a glass ceiling, or do you think it's something they can work around and still improve in other aspects?
Sorry, can you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
Just leading on from other points, people who maybe have mental health issues, or if they're not as neurotypical, and it's not that they're not trying to have empathy, and it's more they can't. Do you think it's a glass ceiling for them?
Yeah, 100%. I think, you do have to be understanding to that as well, that, people with mental health might not necessarily, they may struggle with the empathy side of things. That's a great point.
I'll just bring this. Oh, there's one final question, Olivia, just over here, please.
Hi, thanks for the great talk. Just a quick one on the cross-training you mentioned. You said that was one of your personal favourites. Just wondering if there's any sort of examples of cross-training. Would it be like mob testing, QA and dev collaboration, ways of learning each other's roles? Any specific techniques that you think could be good for encouraging empathy that way?
Yeah, so there's kind of different variations of it and different ways of doing it. So you can have, like you say, those education sessions where you kind of educate each other on your role. But you could also have that person step into that role, for a period of time to understand the role better. So, for example, like software engineers and QAs. So you could have a software engineer go into a QA role to better understand that role. For example, you could have a software engineer go into a delivery role to better understand like how that role works. I just find that when you understand the role better and the challenges around that, you tend to be more receptive of that kind of role and respect it a bit more as well, which kind of just builds that relationship.
Thank you. Hayley, very much appreciate you sharing today and actually bringing out some of the technical benefits as well as the wider benefits across the team. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.